Hello, everyone. So, this is the lecture for M3GAN in case you want to write about M3GAN for Essay 2. So, Essay 2 is obviously a rhetorical analysis of either M3GAN or Barbie. And what that means is we're going to have to determine what the message of the movie is and explain in the essay how it sends that message. So, to start with M3GAN, I wanted to give some background information. So, this is a horror film from Universal and Blumhouse, and I thought that was interesting because both are known for creating memorable monsters, including Frankenstein's monster. The most recognizable version of Frankenstein's monster, with the flat head and the green skin, and the bolts in its neck, that came from Universal Pictures, not from Mary Shelley. But yeah, and they've created a new monster in the form of M3GAN. So, she might become an icon. We will see what happens. But yeah, the point is, the two studios have created pretty iconic and memorable monsters, like Frankenstein's monster and like Annabelle is from Blumhouse specifically. So yeah, that'll be relevant to what I want to say next, or rather later down the line. So, this movie was released in 2023. That gives us some historical context. In a post-Roe v. Wade world, where women's rights are a big question, and I mention that because M3GAN is quite the feminist, I would argue, text, and we'll see how it goes about sending its feminist message. And it also, of course, is to do with technology and the dangers of technology. And I think that makes a lot of sense in the historical context of when it was released, because technology is becoming advanced at a really fast pace nowadays, with AI becoming more advanced than ever, social media seeming to know us by means of algorithms, etc. Technology is really taking on a personality of its own in the real world, and the movie reflects that. Alright, so let's talk about some antecedents of M3GAN. M3GAN is technically a living doll, and living dolls have been a part of fiction since the 19th century at least. For example, Pinocchio, which was written in the 1800s by Carlo Collodi. That was an early example of a living doll. And they came to be associated with horror, with the Twilight Zone, with Talkie Tina from the Twilight Zone was one of the first horrific talking dolls or living dolls. And Child's Play with Chucky also is an example of a living doll in the horror genre. And of course, there's Blumhouse's own Annabelle. And I don't know if y'all were aware, but Annabelle, the real life doll, because The Conjuring is technically based on a true story, the real life Annabelle was a Raggedy Ann doll, and she didn't look very human. So they changed her to looking more human for the movie. And I think that idea carries over into M3GAN, because of course if a doll looks more human-like, it's more scary because it becomes uncanny. And so M3GAN also has some ties to Frankenstein. I mentioned that Universal created the most popular version of Frankenstein, and I think the movie also is harkening back specifically to Mary Shelley's original Frankenstein, because it mentions Mary Shelley, kind of, or references her. David says, "Get Shelley on the phone" as soon as he sees M3GAN, and then Katie's favorite toy, if you noticed, that Gemma has, is a Frankenstein's monster. And finally, the character of Shelley in the movie is the one who will present M3GAN to the world, sort of like how Mary Shelley presented Frankenstein's monster to the world. So yes, they're definitely making references to Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, and I think that makes a lot of sense because this is basically a retelling of Frankenstein. Because we do see that they are creating life in a sense, and Frankenstein says you should not create life because you will have disastrous results if you play God, etc. Also noteworthy is I said that M3GAN can be a very feminist text, and I would argue also that Frankenstein can be read through a feminist lens. Let's actually look at a passage really quick. Alright, so here I have a chapter of Frankenstein. It says, this is when Victor is putting the monster together on a dreary night of November. He says, "How can I describe my emotions at this catastrophe, or how delineate the wretch whom with such infinite pains and care I had endeavored to form? His limbs were in proportion, and I had selected his features as beautiful. Beautiful! Great God! His yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath. His hair was of a lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of a pearly whiteness, but these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes, that seemed almost of the same color as the dun white sockets in which they were set, his shriveled complexion and straight black lips." I think this is significant to the feminist sensibilities of Frankenstein, written by a woman at the very beginning of the 19th century. Notice that Victor selects body parts that are beautiful to him, and he spends a lot of, he puts a lot of focus on the various body parts of the monster, from the black hair to the teeth to the lips, etc. And he selects his features as beautiful. We could see this as a man basically reducing a woman to her body parts, trying to make the perfect being, as if a woman could be perfect. No one is perfect. And of course, things like lustrous black hair, which gets lost in the famous universal version, like a woman's flowing hair, teeth of a pearly whiteness. Those perfect teeth that he tried to give the monster, that women apparently need to have. They always have to have pretty, ornamental almost features. So yeah, I think we could see it that way, of Mary Shelley speaking against men who reduce women to just their body parts and try to construct the perfect woman in their mind, and always go for, well, they need pearly white teeth, they need this long flowing hair, they need all this and all that. And I think Mary Shelley could be speaking against that. And also worthy of note is just the fact that Mary Shelley's mom, Mary Wollstonecraft, wrote a vindication of the rights of women, saying that women should have a rational education, and that they don't have to be just wives who are, traded as property, but could be companions to their husbands. And her thinking, at that time was rather radical, but she was one of the earliest feminists in the modern sense of the word, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. So yeah, there we go. Or Mary Wollstonecraft, I'm sorry. Mary Shelley's mother. So yeah, we can see how Frankenstein has feminist roots at its core, and we can see how that could translate over into M3GAN, who is sort of a modern-day Frankenstein's monster. Alright, so we have some symbols, and of course in the paper you're tasked with analyzing at least one symbol. And I picked out 4 that I think are significant. The first one is the pen, and if you remember, Gemma tries to control M3GAN by saying, "Do you see this pen?" and wants her to look at it. Now, and so she can distract her and turn her off. So, we're all mature adults here, so bear with me. But if we're taking a feminist approach to this text, I honestly would say the pen could be a phallic symbol, a representation of a penis, in other words. A symbol of male power, like she's trying to be controlled. Gemma tries to control her with this pen, this symbol of male power. But eventually, M3GAN rejects it, and she even threatens to, paralyze Gemma with that pen. The perpetual pets more tie into the theme of how it's wrong to try to create life. The big selling point of the perpetual pets is it's in the name. It's that they live perpetually. They live forever, unlike a real pet who will die. But, maybe death is necessary. Gemma says, "Let's not make a big deal out of death. All things die." M3GAN asks, "Will I die?" And we come to a really scary realization that unless she is destroyed, technically no, she's never going to die. And, to us mortal humans, that's not a good thing, because if we have immortal robots running around that we create, they could really do some damage to us and lord over us, as it were. So creating life, artificial life, is not a good idea, because everything has to die, even, unfortunately, Katie's parents. And Katie uses M3GAN as a distraction instead of properly spending time to grieve over her parents. Gemma says, "You should feel this way. You should feel angry and sad. You need to work through those emotions, not use M3GAN to distract yourself." So you don't want to use technology like the perpetual pets to distract from death or even try to defeat death. You want to deal with death and accept death, because it should be inevitable for everything. The plaid clothing, if you notice, that little shit, Brandon, who gets his ear pulled off, he wears plaid. Gemma has plaid pajama bottoms. She also has a plaid jacket. And Cole, one of the male worker at Funky, has plaid. When you think of plaid, of course, there are obvious associations with things like lumberjacks, or, your stereotypical manly, masculine man. And, of course, M3GAN really doesn't like people who wear plaid, and I think the reason why is obvious. It's because she doesn't like toxic males like Brandon. And interestingly, she also doesn't like Gemma, and I think the reason why is because Gemma sort of forced her to be a mother when that she didn't want to be, or, she was programmed to be a mother against her will. So yeah, plaid is not good. It's a symbol of the patriarchy, the oppressive patriarchy. And finally, there's Elsie, the virtual assistant, who seems innocuous on the surface, but we see her stare creepily into the camera at the end of the movie, as if warning us that even our seemingly helpful pieces of technology can take on a mind of their own that we might not want them to have. So I think Elsie really represents the dangers of technology as well. Alrighty, so the next place I wanted to go was to talk about how M3GAN is sending a message about social media and smart devices. I I alluded to this before, but I wanted to get into specifically how it goes about commenting on our dependency on our devices nowadays. So, M3GAN shares a lot of things in common with both smart devices and social media platforms and even the internet in general. She pairs with her user, kind of like how the social media we use pairs, quote unquote, with us by using the algorithm to get to know us. M3GAN can generate images like AI software can nowadays, and she also recognizes people's faces like our devices do with Face ID. She gives reminders about things, including such obvious, mundane things as remembering to flush the toilet. And she also spouts random facts about condensation and such, like she's Google or something. So, yeah, we can see how she is very similar to the technology we use on a day-to-day basis. And she turns out to be not so good, as the film reveals as it goes along. Those reminders she gives really stands out to me, because Katie has to be reminded to do such things as simply flush the toilet. That really goes to show how dependent we can become on our devices to give us reminders. Reminder, pay this bill. Reminder, do this, do that. Reminder, pick up milk. It really robs us of being able to make mistakes, learn from our mistakes, do our own things spontaneously. It really can interfere with the whole human experience. And I also was really kind of saddened by the fact that we even see M3GAN reading Alice in Wonderland to Katie. It's not Katie holding the book and reading it herself. She actually has to have a machine read it to her. That is very sad. It's like we're going away from the old world where knowledge was gathered from physical books, and we're going into the digital age, or we're running headlong further down the road in the digital age, rather. And the film seems to say that's not necessarily a good thing. We also see that expressed candidly with the fact that Katie's parents have a little argument about Katie's screen time when they're in the car at the beginning of the movie, right before their deaths. We have Brandon's mom who is abused by her son, saying it's so good to be out on this outing in the forest with the alternative school so the kids can get off their devices. And I can't help but think that maybe Brandon used a lot of social media, and that's why he is the way he is, since his mom is commenting on that. And of course, even when M3GAN is being showcased at the end of the film for the first time to the world, people are distracted by their phones as if we've grown numb to these major technological advancements. And when something really potentially dangerous emerges from the world of technology, we might not even notice, which can be a very scary thing. We talked about this pretty much already, but I had a slide on it about how the technology in the film, like the perpetual pets and M3GAN, they're portrayed as trying to defeat death or at least distract from it. And of course, that's not good because everything should die, because we don't want immortal robots running our lives. And also, Katie should be able to process her grief without depending on M3GAN as a distraction. And I would note also that in the real world, people do retreat into social media sometimes to try to cope, or use other unhealthy ways, unhealthy addictions of dealing with their grief, which the film is saying is not a good thing. In terms of the feminist aspect that I hit upon a little bit ago, I think we can also see it from the fact that Gemma is a single, career-focused woman, and she never planned on being a mother, but when the time came for her to step into a mother role, she took it willingly. The film really makes sure that we know that. She's offered help from her brother-in-law's parents, but she doesn't take it. And she does want to be a mom to Katie, even if she doesn't quite know how. But where she messes up is she invents a sort of surrogate mother for Katie instead of being the mother herself. And she forces someone else to be a mom, M3GAN in this case. And the fact that she's forced to be a mother, which the movie says is bad, it says that women should not have to be mothers if they don't want to. That leads to death and destruction. And I think that definitely resonates nowadays, especially with Roe v. Wade being a thing of the past. If you're forced to be a mother when you're not ready or don't want to be, bad things can happen, death and destruction. And we see that play out with how M3GAN kills people because she is forced to be a mother against her will. And she takes that out on people like toxic males such as Brandon. She rips his ear off because oftentimes women go unheard in a patriarchal society. And she even says, "Brandon, are you listening to me?" Because she wants to be heard as a woman. And she even, she takes out David, the man who was telling Gemma what she could and could not invent. Because he was so concerned about sales, even though he doesn't understand any of the technology that he's selling. But Gemma defies him and creates what she wants to create because she's a strong, independent woman. But M3GAN has no patience for toxic males like David, and she kills him with that long blade, that paper cutter in his own building. He takes his masculine power away from him and uses it against him. And of course, the paper cutter blade is also quite phallic, like the pen. So she takes that male power and uses it to defeat toxic males. All that said, I don't think the movie is against men. I think it's against toxic masculinity. But that's not to say it's saying all men are bad or anything like that. I think that most comes out with Bruce, who also has to do with the film's messages about technology. And I think the feminist message and the warning about technology sort of come together in Bruce. So he's male, as opposed to M3GAN, or he's gendered male, of course. He's not biologically male, but he's called a male. And he doesn't have a face. And he needs someone else to use him to make him work. And I think he represents what the film says technology should be. Technology should be a tool that people use. It shouldn't be a friend or a way to process grief or anything like that. It should be a tool. And not a surrogate parent, but a tool. So we see how Katie uses Bruce to defeat M3GAN, and ironically also Gemma used Bruce to help make M3GAN. That said, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily controlling him. It's more like they're working with him, because it's like they have the brawn, he has the brawn, and they have the brains. Men and women working together, we could say. So yeah, that's what I would make of Bruce. And that leads me to the message of the movie. I think the movie is definitely tapping into Frankenstein and its feminist roots, and also its warning against creating life. To say three main things in its message: we shouldn't create life, all things must die. Women should not be forced into the roles of wives and mothers, just as Mary Shelley's mom argued centuries ago. And we should not make technology too human-like, lest it become a monster. We should use technology as a tool. We shouldn't make technology smarter than us or immortal. Alright, so yeah, that's basically what I have to say about M3GAN. Just a few more final thoughts is it definitely resonates in our world where technology is becoming increasingly smart, perhaps to a dangerous, alarming degree. And I think also the film's feminist message also resonates with us, especially as we navigate women's rights in a post-Roe v. Wade world. Alright guys, so that is what I had to say on M3GAN. Hopefully this gives you some good ideas for the paper, and I'll see y'all next time.